Inside Tonight. Today marks 4 months since the November elections, and one of the most important races in North Carolina remains unresolved. Now, we have been following this closely since November. After 2 recounts, the State Board of Elections determined that Democrat and incumbent Supreme Court Justice Allison Riggs won by just 734 votes, defeating Republican and State Court of Appeals Judge Jefferson Griffin. This was out of 5.5 million ballots cast. Now, despite the recounts, Griffin filed lawsuits claiming more than 60,000 ballots should not be counted. Griffin's legal team is going after ballots for various reasons here. In some cases, their driver's license or social security numbers may be missing from the state elections database. In other cases, their names may have changed or are spelled differently, or they may have registered to vote before certain documents were required. It was also challenging overseas and military votes who were not required to show voter ID. Griffin says all these votes may have been fraudulent and should be thrown out. A legal battle has been working its way through the courts. Last month, Jefferson, Riggs, and lawyers for state elections officials appeared in state court. State officials in those elections there say that overseas voters are not required by state law to show voter ID. But Griffin's attorneys say the State Board of Elections misinterpreted that law. Meanwhile, Riggs's lawyer says those votes follow the rules that were in place at the time. Now, the judge ultimately dismissed Griffin's complaint, but his legal team filed another appeal, and the State Election Board petitioned to skip the appeals court and have the State Supreme Court make a ruling. But the justices vote 4-2 against that, with Riggs recusing herself, meaning the case could take longer to resolve. Now, the legal fight has prompted some protests across the state. You see Griffin's efforts as a way of overturning the results. Let's look at a protest a couple weeks ago in Asheville. This week, the ACLU even getting involved, filing an amicus brief in the appeals court, arguing that throwing out the ballots would violate state law. Now, in a statement, the co-director of the ACLU State Supreme Court Initiative said in part, quote, "In North Carolina, voters choose their judges. Judges don't choose their voters. Throwing out ballots from eligible voters who cast their ballots in reliance on the procedures prescribed by government officials would be profoundly unfair and a grave violation of the rights of every North Carolinian." Now, that's that statement right there. Again, it says in North Carolina, voters choose their judges. Judges don't choose their voters. Throwing out ballots from eligible voters who cast their ballots in reliance on the procedures prescribed by government officials would be profoundly unfair and a grave violation of the rights of every North Carolinian. Again, that's from ACLU. Now, we did reach out to the North Carolina Republican Party for comment. They tell us Judge Jefferson Griffin is courageously fighting for election integrity and raising these important issues to judicial review. Now, in each instance, photo ID, never resident voting, and the State Board of Elections' failure to maintain accurate voter polls, these protests seek to apply the rule of law in this contest. And we also reached out to the North Carolina Democratic Party. While we have not yet heard back, they did post on their Facebook page, quote, "It's been exactly 4 months since Justice Riggs won, but Jefferson Griffin still refuses to concede and continues to waste taxpayer resources with baseless lawsuits. Griffin's efforts are not only pathetic, they pose a real threat to our democracy. He must concede." Now, the North Carolina State Board of Elections did release a list of people whose ballots are being challenged by Griffin. And we took a look to see just how many are in western North Carolina. In total, we found 4,895. Well, here's a breakdown by county. Most are being challenged due to incomplete registration information, and Buncombe County has the most with nearly 2,700 ballots. More than 1,000 of those are overseas or military ballots with no photo ID, and this is followed by Henderson, Rutherford counties, who each have more than 300. Now, each of our counties have at least some ballots being challenged. Toward the bottom of the list are Yancey and Graham counties, with both having less than 100. Now, if you're wondering if your ballot is being challenged, we have a link in our article at foxcarolina.com, which will take you to where you can download the list and check. The state officials say voters being challenged can contact their county election board for any questions and to learn more on how to update your voter registration.